From magnetism to plant power, the siege weapons of Guild Wars are diverse indeed, heavily leaning towards cannons but with some surprises along the way. We even have a triple throwdown to claim one of the higher spots. What makes a siege weapon straight fire? Let's go through the list together and find out. First up, 10. Number 10 is the Master Cannon in Carver's or Patrick's Ascent, named depending on the World vs. World borderland you're in. Most of these picks aren't World vs. World related, but I do have a triple threat fighting for a spot later on in the episode. I have also generally ruled out weapons as small as this one from the list, but I made an exception here because it has so many neat little details and interactions. The Ascent is one of the 5 Borderlands ruins a faction has to control to gain a buff across the Borderlands, and this ruin is vertically structured with the Master Cannon build site at the very top of the ruin. It takes exactly 10 supply to build and has a range covering the ruin and nearby hills, but not far enough to be useful in sieging the nearby tower or contesting the sentry on the other side. To get up to the build site, you have to do a mini jumping puzzle, which is super easy when you're jumping to build the cannon, but significantly more difficult if an enemy is on the cannon and raining fire down at you. I once defeated an invader here because they came to capture the point while I was playing with the cannon. It's a fun addition and has some war story potential, which makes this smallest siege weapon number 10. 9. Number 9 is an Iron Legion siege cannon in Drizzlewood Coast. This zone is filled with siege engines of many varieties, from large tanks to copters. But this video is on the large stationary siege weapons. Thus, this beast stood out to me. It looks wicked with large grills along the side. These look most like what the top results on Quora describe as vent holes, which has the purpose of letting ignition gases escape instead of pressing the weapon backwards. In other words, they might be there to reduce recoil significantly. And with a weapon this size hurling huge missiles, lessening the stress on the platform beneath it seems wise. It also has these huge chains hanging about, which might be a way to manually drag and reposition the barrel, though this seems like it would take a lot of muscle. Just look at this moving mechanism. Those gears are huge. The weapon doesn't move in game, but the visual clearly gives me the impression of heavy gears clanking together. A sound I heard in a bunker once when it showed off the rotation of a large coastal battery gun. I feel like I could rant on about the details put into this siege weapon for a while. What do the pipes going into this platform do? Are there different sizes of gear made to ease the movement like gears on the bicycle? What kind of projectile goes into the loading door you can see on the back of the weapon? But we'll have a bunch of diverse cannons on this list, so for now I'm giving this Iron Legion siege cannon the 9th place. 8. Number 8 is the most common type of Pact cannon. Found in maps as diverse as the Silver Wastes, Frostgorge Sound, and Dragonfall, this cannon is crafted with a circular button that can float above a solid metal platform. This seemed to happen due to some form of magnetic levitation where powerful magnets are placed to repel a single object. If the correct amount of magnetism is generated within the button platform, that would potentially be able to hold up the cannon. The heat mirage effect confuses me a bit though, since most magnetic levitation devices I could find seem to use some sort of superconductor, which always works better at lower temperatures. This meant mist was constantly dripping off rather than the air becoming heated. The cannon also seems to be blasting 2 balls of lightning at once, which might suggest that the main barrel isn't actually shooting, but rather serves as some sort of separator or conduit for the electricity, as the second barrels over and under the main one conduct the actual projectiles. I also really like this ball within a ball design that allows the inner turret to be rotated along this gear mechanism at the top of the cannon. All in all, a solid design that deserves its spot as number 8. 7. Number 7 are the Jade cannons used by the White Mantle for the Siege of Divinity's Reach. These cannons seem to be using screw-like devices to both hold in place and activate the bloodstone magic absorbed by Jade chunks that make up the primary barrel. It's a neat detail that shows us that the Jade in the Guild Wars universe can absorb and contain magic, which is reinforced when we later go to Cantha, where the Jade from the Jade Ocean is being charged with dragon magic from Zoo 1. In fact, an NPC in the Jade Sea tells us that the Jade Ocean was once a bluish turquoise, but changed into the green we see nowadays due to the magic released by Saitan when we, the commander, slew him. I haven't been able to find any links between the Jade Sea and the Jade used by the White Mantle, but it would make sense that Jade being suffused by immense magic of a bloodstone would take on this more purplish cast. A combination of the bluish turquoise and the blood red, perhaps? That would of course mean that the Jade these cannons are made of would have come from Cantha before we slew Saitan, but back then Cantha was isolationist and hated outsiders. How did the White Mantle acquire this Jade? That's a question that I've been unable to answer. However, looking at these cannons releasing energy in a very careful way by forming and then drilling into the Jade itself does make a crude mirror to the elegant technology of Cantha. We'll see more of the Canthan technology later on in this list, but for now, the White Mantle Jade cannons are placed on the 7th spot. 6. Number 6 is the Vigil Megalaser, used to shoot Tekatl the Sunless out of the sky. Being a central part of one of the most iconic world boss fights from the core game makes this cannon worth a look. Clearly Azoran in design, it's charged by 3 large batteries scattered around the battlefield. Each battery has its own huge station inscribed with those weird magical technological Azoran symbols that seem to be somewhere between incantations and mathematical formulae. The cannon itself is airlifted down when the event begins. If you spawn on a failed map, the pedestal stands empty, but as the Vigil forces line up to fight Tekatl, the cannon spawns. And it has some interesting details. The entire barrel is composed of rings that spin, each one in the opposite direction of the last. All of them are inscribed with more of those Azoran symbols. The metal grating at the base of the cannon might be a type of vent hole, like what we saw with the Iron Legion siege cannon. After this cannon fires, we can see this white misty steam spraying out everywhere as it recharges. This might be heated water or the magical equivalent, thus a grate to help disperse it and make it less likely to strike anyone near the cannon might be a great feature. The cannon fires a massive beam multiple times during the Tekatl encounter, and it definitely makes sense that it takes some time to power something strong enough to do this to an Elder Dragon Lieutenant. The only complaint I have is that the back of the cannon has this slightly separated square, and I wish that it would slam into the rest of the cannon as it fires, kind of like a flintlock setting off its charge. Even though that doesn't happen, this cannon still deserves a high slot on this list. I have another one of this Azoran model slightly higher up as it has something this one doesn't, but for now the Vigil Megalaser gets to shoot for number 6. 5. Number 5 are the Ballisti made by the Deldrimor dwarves and placed around Thunderhead Keep in Thunderhead Peaks. That might have been a little obvious, but the Ballisti are pretty rad. They are made on this stone platform engraved with very Celtic looking infinity nuts. To need this larger platform, I must imagine they have a great deal of recoil when they fire their projectiles. Take note of the mounting as well, the large metallic bolt that connects the top part to the wooden mount. The keep has a row of broken ballistae with only half of these platforms remaining. As the keep comes under siege by the branded, we get to repair them and use a completed ballista to repel them. I really like it when you get to see environmental weapons around and then in the same zone can repair and use these same weapons. It makes the environment feel more real when there are a couple of examples of this around. More like a world than just a background canvas. So while their wave patterns and huge defensive shields look super cool, the interactability is truly what puts them in the 5th spot. 4. Number 4 are the Jade cannons I promised earlier in the video. There's a couple of different types around Cantha, but this one is special because it incorporates Aetherblade pirate tech, further boosting its capabilities, I presume. I mean, perhaps the pirates just really like the aesthetics. As a Fashion Wars 2 enthusiast myself, I can relate. Anyhow, these cannons seem to be built around a solid core of jade, which, as we established earlier, means dragon magic. Some sort of golden or a calcum shell is fitted around the jade, and this has then again been encased in the Aetherblade pirate technology with its iconic red energy patterns. It's a great contrast between the very saturated colors of gold and green set up against the washed out dark grey and pale red. These cannons seem to be charged or calibrated through the green holographic patterns that seem a little too high-tech even for the techie part of Guild Wars. The patterns bear striking resemblance to microchips, so holographic microchips is a little too modern for my taste in fantasy games, but it's subtle enough that I can appreciate the floaty magical stuff from afar without thinking about it. And no hate if you like the techie stuff. I'm placing this cannon as high as I am partly because of these aesthetics, but also because it has some cool environmental clues. These are dropped in when the Aetherblades fortify the area, which leaves these scorch marks beneath them that can even be seen between metas, as lone Aetherblades go about their business repairing the electrical fencing around the cannons. The last bit of visual storytelling I'd like to mention here is how the cannons are placed within range of the city, supporting the storyline that the Aetherblades are looting the surrounding villages and preparing to either defend reinforcements from the city or perhaps even sieging and looting the city itself. For all these reasons, I place the Aetherblade Jade cannons in the 4th spot. 3. The 3rd place goes to another cannon that the Aetherblades have borrowed, let's say, from the cultures they've interacted with. This design is identical to the Vigil Megalaser, but small enough that it can fit on the front of an airship, and it has the iconic red energy signature of the Aetherblades rather than the neutral blue-white of the Vigil. Since the secret sponsor of the Aetherblades, Scarlet Briar, has studied at the Azoran colleges, it seems logical to find Azoran technology at the center of Aetherblade upgrades. Why is this cannon higher than the huge impressive Vigil Megalaser, I hear you ask? Primarily 2 reasons. First, the storyline of this cannon is better integrated than the Vigil Vigil Megalaser. The Megalaser is simply there because we need a big weapon, and the Vigil probably has one of those. It might as well be replaced with the magnetic Pact cannons that the Vigil also use on the Claw of Jormak. So while it's cool, it's mostly storyless. Why specifically a Soratech is used here, however, is very well documented, as I just mentioned with Scarlet's backstory. Secondly, I get to manually fire this one. It has this cool cutscene where it charges up, spinning faster and faster, and then fires at another pirate ship, destroying its engine and leaving it to fall into the clouds, which grants the achievement Unfriendly Skies. Other than that, there's not much to say here that hasn't already been covered on the Vigil Megalaser. For the connection to the lore, this Aetherblade Inquest laser cannon gets the honor of 3rd place. 2. The 2nd place is a little bit special this episode. I knew I wanted a buildable world versus world siege weapon somewhere on this list, and the Trebuchet is without a doubt the superior medieval siege engine, which means it had to be one of them. But there are 3 options here: the regular Trebuchet, the superior Trebuchet, or the Guild Trebuchet. They actually all have some really cool design features, which made the decision between them more difficult than I thought, and thus hold on, let me just get into the mood here. A Triple Trebuchet Showdown! In the first corner, we have the old boy, the classic module, the original gangster. This module stands on 8 metal reinforced wooden legs, further fastened by metal spikes dug into the ground. And boy, does it need them. With a straight up piece of ruined building serving as its counterweight, it's clear that this bad boy does not respect any authority. The pulling mechanism for getting the sling into place can smoothly be cranked down, and the wooden top connecting the entire arm to the foundation allows for 360-degree rotation. How flexible! But it has tough competition. In this corner, we have the superior Trebuchet. Is it confidence or arrogance that makes it pick such a name? Let's see for ourselves. A heavy, solid base forms the foundation here. Layers of wooden planks stacked up with whole-ass trunks layered like the siege cake of death, allowing for easy movement around the base. The top part is attached with heavy steel bars. And why do something as barbaric as using a piece of ruin for counterweight when a heavy chunk of solid steel will do the trick? This is fastened with hardwood splits, just as one would fasten an axe blade. Since those can last a while without flying off, the same is probably true for swinging multiple ton boulders around. Speaking of boulders, while smaller than the sling of the original Trebuchet, the superior sling has multiple chains fastening it to the arm. These instantly let this badass Trebuchet tighten this sling, reducing the potential for slamming into allied soldiers. No OSHA violations here, no sir! Along with the cool Viking-like decorations, this is a worthy contender. But we're not done yet. Before we can make our decision, we have to look at the last contender, the Guild Trebuchet. Ruined metal chunk, those are for chops. This Trebuchet uses a huge steel anvil as its counterweight. It's of a darker, more luxurious wood than the other contenders and has a metal gear base with large visible cranks for easy rotation and arm maneuvering. This absolute beast even comes preloaded with half-molten rocks, smoking and throwing sparks everywhere. I probably shouldn't have put it on the top of a wooden fortification, but anyways, with a badass wolf-like head holding up the anvil and your guild's logo on the sides, this contender too is pretty slick. Yeah, okay. And for the battle between them, well, they all have great features. Overall, aesthetically, I prefer the Guild Trebuchet, but it has this annoying visual bug where the arm teleports when it resets from firing, which ruins it for me enough not to pick it. The superior Trebuchet has a superior rotational platform to the ordinary one. Even though the ordinary Trebuchet's 8 stabilizing legs look cool, they only leave space for that tiny disc to turn on, which seems pretty unstable. But sometimes it just is about size. Size does matter in some matters, and I'm not here to rain pebbles down on my enemies, which is why the superior Trebuchet doesn't do it for me either. Leaving the ordinary Trebuchet as the winner, the take of the silver medal, the 2nd place on this list. 1. At the top of this list is where it shows that my first main was a Sylvari. These Pact cannons use a mix of root structures and char tech to function. At first glance, they seem to draw ambient magic from the ground in order to fire blue blasts of energy. This would make sense as ore is fed by the artisanal waters and ancient, well, it's unclear whether the waters themselves are a source of magic, or if they were infused with magic by the Elder Dragon Saitan's long slumber near them. Personally, I like to think the waters are infused by the magic of a ley line, and that's what made Saitan choose to slumber there. Ley lines were important in waking up Mortremoth, and every dragon since has had ley lines as a massive part of their story. Since all of that comes after Saitan, my headcanon is that the devs probably didn't begin using ley lines until Mortremoth, but liked them so much that they ended up taking center stage, thus leaving them oblique in Saitan's story, but probably presence should we ever return to ore. That rant aside, the land of ore is charged with magic, and biological cannons that feed off of magic to charge the shots is a great concept. They would only work here, and it shows off the Sylvari dedication to the Pact before the Hearts of Thorn calamity. Though something is weird about the energy flow. While the blue lines of the rear spikes flow into the cannon itself, all the runes seem to be flowing out of the cannon and down into the ground. I'm not quite sure why that is. Perhaps the magic is actually taken in from the air and then the excess magic is pumped into the ground, but that would undermine the magic water hypothesis, and I can't really see another good explanation for how these cannons work. No matter how they work though, it's a lovely touch to see them fit so well into the local environment and potentially hint at why they can only exist here, as well as having this withering animation for when they are destroyed, which they can be by any enemy hitting them. It's atmospheric and helps tell the localized story of the Pact constantly struggling for ground with Zaitan's forces, and that's why this cannon is awarded the top spot on this list. Now, of course, the conclusion overall is going to be that the integration into world building and storytelling is king. From the Aetherblade technology jury rigging the Aetherblade Jade cannons to the rooted Pact cannons sucking up magic in ore, having a compelling reasoning for why the siege weaponry would look in a specific way on a specific map is the foundation for making them appealing. Besides this omnipresent argument, however, I've also found that siege weapons are something that seems interactable. The ones I couldn't interact with were less interesting to me. It's fair that I wouldn't know how to fire the Aetherblade Jade cannons since they don't have a clear interface, but then I get to destroy them during the meta event by bypassing their shields and then taking out their operator. Would they be even greater if I could have taken them over and used them to remove layers of shielding from the following miniboss? Of course they would. That would probably have gotten them the first spot. The same goes for the Pact magnetic cannons. Visually, they're probably more interesting than the Deldrimor Ballisti, but those I get to build up and fire myself, which all leads to the conclusion that when a set piece, such as a siege cannon, is realistically interactable by your character, they should probably allow you to actually use it in the game as well, to up the feeling of realness and immersion within the world. Now, before we end, I need to make an honorable mention. One of you suggested the catapult in Diesa Plateau. Unfortunately, it wasn't until I had already done all of the filming and most of the scripting for the video. It will definitely be on a missed things top 10 at some point, since it seems to have an entire event chain attached to it and the option of being launched out of it. For now though, check out this video on top 10 ships, which I spent 200 gold to access one of the entries for.